Hello and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Ravella. Today, we're taking a look at kindness and how we can motivate each other to do kind things for each other. You're going to enjoy Sharon's story today, but before we get into that, I do want to say that I've had a lot of feedback, a lot of people saying we would love to have a longer episode, or we'd love to have an episode over the weekend, or we'd love to have an episode with a few more voices. And so I've heard all your cries and I've combined it all into a very special bonus exclusive episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. So this Sunday, which happens to be Mother's Day here in Australia, the Everyday Joy podcast is releasing a bonus 30-minute episode with not one, not two, but 3 familiar voices, as well as 1 new guest. They're all mums. They've all got kids ranging from baby all the way through to adult. And the best part is that they are all going to join me in studio together. We're going to have a great conversation on a verse found in Proverbs chapter 31. You're going to have to wait till Sunday before we get there. Right now, though, let's get into today's verse.
Hebrews 10:24. Let's think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And that's from the NLT.
Once again, I've got the amazing Sharon here with me in studio from Celebrate Messiah. Celebrate Messiah is an amazing ministry based here in Australia, and what they do is connect Jews living in Australia to the message of Jesus, and you can find out more at celebratemessiah.com.au. Sharon, so good to have you again.
Good to be back with you.
We are heading towards Mother's Day this weekend, and I do want to pause and say that for some mums, this is a difficult time of year. For some mums, it's a beautiful celebration, and for some mums, it's a time in between. So I just wanted to pause and acknowledge that. But we have talked about motherhood a fair bit this week. A little bit earlier, we talked about your decision to lay down essentially your dream career in order to look after your son who really needed you. We talked about training up a child and how sometimes we need to train ourselves up in order for us to train our children up well.
We're all God's children, right?
That's right. And today, sort of wrapping up all of this week's conversation as we do head towards Mother's Day, talking about, well, we'll get into a little bit later, but about the times in our lives where all of it comes down to loving one another. Hebrews 10:24. Let's think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. What are your first impressions of this one?
Yeah, just how different it is from our usual grind in this society. So we live in a society where we're often encouraged to kind of condemn others, point the finger, be negative about others. We hear it all over the place in the news, not on this lovely radio station, which is why I listen to it, to get a break from the negativity.
Yeah.
But I think it comes naturally to all of us to hone in on other people's failures. And usually we do a little bit of glossing over our own along the way, make us look better. But I think the only way to motivate others to acts of love and good works is by doing acts of love and good works ourselves. We're all inspired by acts of kindness to kind of pay it forward. And I think it really motivates us to offer kindness to others.
Yeah, it really is infectious, when someone just comes to you with a bowl of kindness.
Yeah.
It fills you up and you want to spread it. And we do have an earlier episode on the Everyday Joy podcast where Ash talks about kindness being a superpower. And this verse talks about not just being kind, but motivating others to be kind as well. It is such a beautiful chain reaction. What does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
Yeah, well, it's like you said with that episode with Ash that I listened to a while ago now. You've got a good memory. That God practices what he preaches, and he's the ultimate example of unselfish love. So when I focus on what Jesus did for me, his kindness, his patience, his gentleness with me, it inspires me to be kind and gentle with others, and to come alongside others with compassion as well. Because, when I was in trouble, when I was helpless in my sins, when I was dying, Jesus down tools and he came down to this earth and he saved me from myself with his own hands and feet. There is no better example of love and kindness, and that I find that really inspiring, to then be that kind of person to others as well.
Yeah, and you've got an experience in your own life as a mum when you really experienced that level of kindness.
Yeah, I do, and I want to begin it with a huge thank you to a wonderful bunch of mums who helped me a long time ago. I hope you're listening, and you know who you are, girls, because you are wonderful, and I think about you almost every day. So I have a story about a time, a long time ago, when I needed help, and I received it from these beautiful, beautiful, God-honouring mums. I had a very difficult pregnancy with my youngest, my daughter Rebecca. I had a massive hernia with complications all over the place, and I needed to have an operation. I actually needed to have several, but I needed to have one really massive operation at 29 weeks. Yeah. And in preparation for that, see, they had to wait till Rebecca was kind of old enough and big enough to cope with this operation. So they didn't want to do it sooner. And I had to stay horizontal for months, about 4 or 5 months. Now, I wasn't allowed to lift or carry anything heavier than a cup of tea.
So you were lying horizontal for months, and the only thing you could lift was basically a cup of tea.
Yeah, I couldn't make food for myself. I was allowed to get up and, go to the bathroom.
So at the time you also had toddlers, I believe.
Yes, I had 2 very busy toddlers. And, I had a life to run, a house to run, the kids to look after and take them to kinder. And I think one of them was just starting primary school. Busy, busy life. I couldn't do a thing. I really needed help. So my amazing mum friends from church got together and they wrote out a roster. And I kid you not, one turned up every single day, and they brought meals with them. And they washed the dishes, and they did the picking up and the dropping off of the boys wherever they needed to be. And they cleaned the house. They even vacuumed my house, which is kind of more than I ever did. But anyway, they really, 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 I'm so grateful to them, because they really inspired me to look out for others who might need help ever since those 4 or 5 difficult months because of what they did for me.
Wow, the power of mums. I feel like mums have this incredible ability to just roll up their sleeves and do what needs to be done. And they have this amazing ability to see when other people aren't quite able to do it themselves. The mum instincts kick in and they say, let me do that, let me help out. You might have heard Jo previously on the Everyday Joy podcast. Jo's a little bit like the mum of the station, a little bit. She's one of the announcers here, and she'll have a sudden what she calls a mum moment where she'll be like, I'll go get the tissues, I'll go get the extra chair. And she just, she comes back and she often says, just being a mum. And it really is.
Yeah, it really is that mum instinct.
Yes, it's this characteristic which I feel is embodied in this verse here that we're taking a look at. Because at the heart, I feel, of motherhood, at the heart of looking and caring for those around us, at the heart of all of it comes to loving one another. Hebrews 10:24, let's think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Now, earlier on in this episode, I talked about the many different kinds of mums as we head towards Mother's Day. The ones who've maybe lost children, the ones who weren't able to conceive, the mums who don't have a proper connection or relationship with them at the moment, mums who've had to be single mums and have had to do both the roles of mum and the father. We've had mums who've miscarried. So there's all these different kinds of mums or women heading towards Mother's Day, approaching it from different angles, from different experiences. What would be your final thought or encouragement on today's episode for them?
Firstly, my heart goes out to mums. Being a mum is tough. It's tough. And I'm a grandmother now. My kids are all grown up, so it's a lot easier. But it was tough when they were younger. All those other mothers who are struggling, who are looking towards Mother's Day with a bit of dread or a bit of mixed feelings or a bit of sadness, my heart goes out to you. I wanted to say that we often look at God as a man. You know, we say he's a he, and we have Jesus, who of course was a man. Did you know that in the Hebrew, the word for Holy Spirit is feminine? So God's Spirit, when we think of Genesis, for example, where God's Spirit is hovering over his creation and he says it is all so good, the word spirit there, it's feminine. And God has a feminine side. God is our ultimate mother and father. So as we head towards Mother's Day, let's focus on the motherness of God, because he's both mother and father. And let's remember that the Bible tells us that God looks at us as a mother hen looks at her chicks and tucks them under her wing.
What I love the most about today's conversation is that beautiful bit at the end where Sharon talked about how God mothers us. And it really just made me smile. When I heard that, I thought, yeah, that really sits right with me. And maybe for you, with Mother's Day coming up, you might feel a whole mix of emotions. But I'd really just like to bring it down to the point of today's podcast episode, the verse that we are focusing on. And the verse we're looking at today is this: Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. Let's think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Is there someone you know who is in hospital? Is there someone you know who is physically unwell? Someone who's maybe recently been diagnosed, or someone who's been sick for a long time? And is that an opportunity for you to show God's love, to show God's kindness? And I do want to focus on health today, those who aren't physically able to look after themselves. Because on top of trying to deal with their own body failing them, they also have marriages and children and mortgages and work to look after. It can be a lot for someone who's not physically well. So the opportunity for you to make a difference is even greater. So today's application is kind of specific, but if a name popped up into your mind right now, well, then maybe it's a sign to go ahead and live out today's verse. What's a kind thing you can do for them? Can you drop off a meal? Can you offer to do some chores? Can you give them a little pass and say, hey, go to a movie, enjoy yourself, because this one's on us? What's something you can do to look after someone specifically who's not in good health? Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I want to remind you again to check back in on Sunday, because we are dropping a bonus episode. It's 30 minutes of power, passion, and so much wisdom. I cannot wait. Look forward to catching up with you this Mother's Day right here on the Everyday Joy podcast.